We're going? All right, guys, I'm giving the thumbs up, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Don't blame that crappy checklist for your, that checklist for your crappy security program. So basically what I'm going to talk about is some of the things that we blame as security practitioners, PCI, ISO, laws, and then I'm going to talk about why it's not these programs that are at fault, it's us as security practitioners. And I'm going to give some examples from some client work I've done. It's all been sanitized. So you'll get to see real-world examples of how information security professionals are failing the companies that we work for. I'll be honest with you, my first couple of slides are okay. My middle slides hang with me. And then the last part is where you'll probably laugh and cry and we'll all hug because those are the real-world examples. So a little bit about myself. I work for Solutionary. I will mention their name quite often because they're paying my bill to come here. And I should change my title to Managing Consultant because I hit gold status on Delta in February. So I have very little time to manage my people, but I'm doing a lot of field work. So that's just how it is sometimes. I consider myself a hardware hacker, which usually results in a pile of pieces because I suck at it, but it's fun, and I love to solder. I love to desolder. I do more desoldering than I do soldering. But I'm a dad and a husband, a Christian, and because we homeschool, and in Kentucky, you have to declare yourself as a homeschool that's attached to the local school district. I am the official dean of the Wilman Way Academy. 3 students. Yeah. That actually means I don't do anything. My wife does it all. But on paper, I'm the dean. So that's my coolest title. I'm also a global traveler. I love to travel, but I always travel with a purpose. I'll tell you, last year, with the support of AIDE and some of the people in this room who actually gave cash, I was able to take my whole family to Uganda for a week and work with Hackers for Charity and another organization called Soul Hope. And then we went to Kenya and worked on our own charity. It's actually to the point now, after 7 years, we're finally pulling the trigger and making it a 501c3. So we'll be able to actually stand that up as an official organization instead of just a bunch of people on a plane with a lot of luggage. The little box on the bottom left-hand side, we carried 3 of those and all the stuff in the trunk of the van to Hackers for Charity so that they could use that stuff in Uganda. While we were there, we actually got to teach some of the street kids. They have a really good street kid education program. And these are like literally the lowest of the low. They're lucky if they get $1 a day through begging. So that was a real treat. If you want to know more about Hackers for Charity, I have an excellent website. Follow them. It's great. You get inspired daily. I'm also a good finder of fail because I fail a lot. This was actually us leaving the Entebbe airport in Uganda going back to Kenya. And this is a little warning from ESET saying basically we're shutting it down. And it gives a reason. But I'll tell you that they had weapon-abled, so I know the reason. I let my daughter's 16, she's been playing with stuff for probably about 3 or 4 years. She wants to be a photographer and an artist. And I don't know what to do with that, so we spend time doing stuff like this. So, some of these standards and frameworks that we blame with all of our problems, I will touch on PCI a lot because that's probably the biggest gripe. PCI is kind of like the CISSP certification. There's a lot of whiners out there that hate it. Most of them, it's because they can't pass. Others, because they don't even try. And then there's some that have legitimate complaints. I pay my $80 a year. What do I get for it? I get access to a website that does me no good. And I get the title of CISSP. That's about it. So my work paid for it. They're paying the maintenance. so I don't complain as much as others. SABSA started as the Sherwood Association of something architects. And what they did was, the Brits are really good at formalizing programs, and SABSA was one of those formal programs where they said, look, we need something that architects, security architects in particular, can get their hands around so that they can build things that are repeatable. They call it solutions architecture is what it is. ISO, it's what the International Organization for Standards. You can thank the French for being kicked around into ISO. Even though English and Russian are the official languages, French, they always get their language in international standards. NIST is excellent. It's great resource whenever you are a federal or large business. Small businesses, I don't even tell people to use it. And the reason is because it's just so massive. There's thousands of security controls within NIST. And then SANS Top 20, it's one of my favorite. I love SANS for their training programs. I don't like the Top 20 because it's basically how much can you pay to get your tool on our list so that we can start charging people for your tool. But hey, it is what it is. And then some of the laws, mandates, regulations. You should be familiar with HIPAA. I mean, even if you've just heard it in the news, right? That's a health law. HITECH was a follow-up to that law because HIPAA didn't really do much. There was no enforcement. So then they created HITECH to further HIPAA and give it the reinforcement teeth. That's when fines started coming. And then one of my favorite, and I know Adrian Crenshaw's favorite, FERPA. I put FERPA down as the bottom of the list. It's probably one of the most useless laws that are on the books. It's to protect, how many students do we have in here? Congratulations, you have a lot of assumed protections under the FERPA law, okay? Now, the law itself is pretty good. What I'm criticizing usually is the security aspect of it. So, Adrian, you and I have both done independent research. Have you ever seen a single college or university, yes, that was fined? I haven't either. It's kind of like the HIPAA of the academia world, right? HIPAA has teeth because of HITECH. A little warning. So I usually present with short bullet points. I think I'm supposed to be a storyteller, not a reader, right? You guys can read. At least I hope you can because you're in college. Or most of you. So I don't like white space, so I use a lot of memes. So try not to let that distract you, okay? So basically, before we talk about these standards and how you think they suck, but you're actually the one failing, let's talk about the overarching umbrella of governance, risk management, and compliance. We usually call this GRC for short, right? Those in the know. We use the lingo, right? Drives me insane. I hate acronyms. Do you know that in order for something to be an acronym, it has to be pronounceable? So GRC is not an acronym. I discovered that this week. My 16-year-old taught me that. I forgot what they're called, but anyway. So GRC is basically, it's a three-pronged approach at security. And the focus is going to be on the business, not on security. What people fail to realize is no one goes into business in order to be really good at security, unless that's your job. People go into business because they want to sell something. They want to make an impact, right? Security usually comes along as a bolt-on because of some law, some standard, something that you're trying to accomplish. These three pillars are supposed to work together and assure that that organization or entity meets its business objectives. So keep that in mind. My background, I have 25 years now in information security. All my degrees are in business. Even my master's degree is in business. Because it's important to understand not just the technical side, you have to understand how that relates to your overlords, right? The people that are putting their name on your check. So as she said before, Tess, if you're the bad guy in the room, people are going to stop listening to you. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are. So a little bit more about GRC. Governance is actually like the overall management approach to how you're going to perform the other actions. Okay? It's supposed to be headed up by your senior executives. And in the case of some laws, it's a requirement. So whenever you do your SOX, that has to be signed by a C-level person, usually your CFO. So that's the approach. Governance, your overlords, right? Risk management is either a process or processes, and I just threw that in there because I like saying that word, processes. And it's supposed to be the process of which management identifies, analyzes, and responds to risk. Now, there's a couple of ways, actually 4 ways of responding to risk. You can either assume the risk. So you can say, you know what? Fine. We suck at that, but we're going to accept it. You can transfer the risk. A lot of times we use cyber insurance to do that. You can mitigate the risk. So you can fix the problem. And then I always forget the 4th, so I'll get back to you on that one. And then the third leg of this stool is basically compliance, and that's conforming with a requirement. Unless there's a federal law and you do something, which means you have to abide by that law, you're going to be picking that yourself. A lot of international companies will pick ISO because it's an international framework. You get this cool little flag that you can fly out in front of your building, and as people drive up, they can see that you're certified in 9001, 27001, 13,000, whatever it might be. So the purpose of compliance is it's a program where you have to actually pick something, assess yourself, compare it to that framework, figure out what gaps you have, and fix the gaps. Right? It's pretty simple. It's really not. It sucks. The larger the business, the harder this is. I scoured the ends of the internet, and I came up with this picture, which was from Wikipedia. I should have gone there to begin with. And basically this, I'm a visual guy, so I like visual representations. The last 3 slides, this is a visual representation of it. So I was wanting a stool to symbolize that, you sit on a three-legged stool, and if you remove one of the legs, you're going to fall over and everything's going to collapse and you die. But yeah. So anyway, you've got your big 3, your governance, your risk management, your compliance, you have your people, processes, technology, and your strategy. Remember I was talking that especially from governance, that has to come as a strategic push from your upper level management. In reality, this is kind of what it looks like. Who does not love Dilbert? Because you can go ahead and leave now. Okay, now that we've established that. So basically, to reach our green goals, employees must always use the blue recycling bins for company documents. To satisfy our corporate security guidelines, you can never put company documents in the blue recycling bin. And then Dilbert says, you read the same policies to us last week, and the boss says, I don't know how to get rid of them. Right? So oftentimes, this is what GRC really looks like. You have one hand that says, we shall use recycling bins for all of our paper products, and then you have another hand that says, except for anything generated internally. So what you're left with, like newspapers, you can throw away, right, in the blue bins. So I got this from PCI Council. This is their spin on how to remain compliant. Obviously, it's got a PCI influence, but basically what they're showing is how most people treat compliance is you have a starting point, you slowly ramp up to where you're actually compliant, you get your report that says you're compliant, and then you just stop doing anything. So this, what's that? Yeah, that's kind of dumb, right? It even says up here in the box, the goal is to remain compliant. That should be everybody's goal. I like this diagram, but it doesn't quite go far enough, so I created my own. And I'm a tech guy, so hopefully this isn't too bad on your eyes, because I throw a lot of things in there. So here's my table. Yeah, and basically what it shows is at this point, everybody's happy because the auditors are walking out the door and you have a good report, right? And then about 6 months later, they get a phone call at this point, and it's from their auditing company that says, hey, I don't know if you remember, we have a 3-year contract with you guys. We're going to come on site in the next 30 days and start our assessment, and it's going to take about 90 days. And they go, holy crap, if you wouldn't have called, we wouldn't have known. So then that's when they start ramping up, usually faster than the other diagram. And then we get those calls and they're like, so we gave you all these policies last year. Can you give those back to us? Because we don't remember where we put them on our own network. So, you know, and usually they'll call me because I'm not their assessor. They're at least smart enough not to call the guy that's about to come on site to look for these policies and ask questions about them. That's the important part. And then at the end of it, they're happy again. So this is kind of, Gartner has their hype cycle. I don't know if you've ever seen that. If you want a good laugh with the Gartner Magic Quadrant, look at that. I kind of emulated them. So let's talk about everybody's favorite standard. Iron Geek, do you love PCI? Yeah, PCI pays the bills. That's why I like it. Whenever I was in the military, I used to say war pays the bills. I'm retired, so now PCI pays my bills. So I love this program. They have a thing called the Data Security Standard. We call it the DSS. Basically, what it says, and this is really hard to read, so I'll tell you what it says. It says, this is like on page 5, by the way. So you get like title page, you get table of contents, and then right off the bat, they say, this is a baseline of technology. If you abide by this, you're still going to suck. You have to do more. But this is a bare minimum, bare bones. And it basically says it again. It says it all throughout the document and all supporting documents, right? It says, do not build a security program for this one little piece just so you can get a piece of paper. Let's see. And then there's the 12 parts of it. We won't go into in-depth on that. Basically, if you continue on to the bottom of the page, they reiterate that. This is minimum set of requirements for protecting basically just credit cards. So don't pick the standard to build an entire security program. You do this standard because you have credit card data. That's it. All right. All throughout PCI, it has these really difficult to read requirements like implement a risk assessment process. You'd be surprised how many people, whenever we go on site, we say, look, this requirement says implement a risk assessment process, and it actually gives you 3 bullets, 3 key items that you need. And then you say, where's your risk assessment? And they'll say, well, you haven't provided us our report yet. Like, wait a minute. This is an audit. You can't go through an audit and then use the result of this audit as one of the auditable items. Right? That's not how this works. It has to be proactive, guys. Come on. Once again, here's a supplemental. It's called an information supplement. It actually tells you, in the event that you don't know how to do a risk assessment, a process to do a risk assessment. It says, hey, do this first. Start with a policy that says you have to do a risk assessment. Right? These are really simple things. Part of the information supplement, they reiterate this is a baseline. Don't build your program on our requirements. It's not going to be good enough for security. All right. This is minimum set of requirements. Different way of saying the same thing. And here's a little note over here. So from the field, often I'll be talking to someone and I will say, provide me the evidence for requirement 2.1. And they will say, well, we have a really good risk assessment process. And it said, we determined that because we're so good at our job, we don't have to do 2.1. So then I'll read this little statement that says, the result of a risk assessment must not be used by organizations as a means of avoiding or bypassing applicable requirements. And they'll say, well, I never read that. And then I'll respond and say, actually, as part of the package, whenever I came on last year, right before I left, I said, your program's pretty good, but this is how you need to make it better. I provided this to you. They love me for that. So, I have these reality checks in here every once in a while. So it's just things to think about. We'll deconstruct this. Ellen Ritchie, basically after the Heartland data breach, I think it was 2 years ago now, she is the Chief Enterprise Risk Officer for Visa. She actually went and publicly said this, which, in my opinion, she shouldn't be speaking to the public. As we've said before, no compromised entity has been found to be in compliance with PCI DSS at the time of the breach. Well, guess what? Whenever I, as an assessor, walk away from that organization, chances are they're not in compliance. Because last night they made a change to their environment that no one has taken a look at. Or they may be in the process where they've looked at it in development, looked at it in test, they've deployed it to production, and then they're wrapping up the paperwork. Because according to PCI, if you don't have the paperwork to support what you just did, you're not in compliance. So this is kind of a ridiculous statement. What she was trying to get across was the fact that a lot of times, whenever PCI assessors walk away, the company forgets about it until the next year. She needs a little bit of public speaking ideas, thoughts. Somebody needs to help her, I think. So those were the boring bits. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some real-world instances of what you as security professionals should not be doing, recommending, or accepting. Okay? Do we have any pen testers out there? One? And usually we have a couple more. Adrian, I'll call you a pen tester, even though you just do video now. Do you actually have billable hours? At least 2 or 3 per week? Yeah, all right. I love Adrian. So here we go. So Tom, Adrian, I'm going to rely on you guys to start the canned laughter and try not to cry. What this is, I go on the client site. One of the first questions I ask is, give me a list of all your assets within your environment that handle credit card data. Give me your vulnerability scans for the last 4 quarters. Hopefully they're passing. If not, we'll talk about it. And then provide me with your pen test. So this particular client gave me a 7-page pen test, which is, I thought it was the executive summary. And they said, no, that's the whole thing. So we'll walk through this pen test. So what I've done is I've taken out the company name that did the test and the company that the test was performed on. And right off the bat, it started off pretty good. It says, blank was able to identify open ports on a firewall. Well, this is an external pen test, by the way. So they're outside acting like a bad guy, trying to get into the network through the firewall. Blank was able to identify the open ports on the firewall and discovered that there was no threat to the payment application systems from the outside, public network, or from the internet. So that's the first question I had. If you're on the outside, are you on the internet? Likely, right? Okay. So that was like, I was like, okay, whatever. As there were no applications or systems detected from the scans. Okay. All right. We'll keep going. Yeah. So as Tom said, did they not detect the firewall? Hopefully, right? But hey, it was concluded that the blank firewall was not penetrable due to the limited number of TCP/IP and UDP ports were opened and the vulnerabilities detected on the firewall were not exploitable. So within the first 2 paragraphs, I'm thinking, I've got serious reservations. You give me a 7-page pen test, no, 7-page pen test, and this is how you start it off. Impenetrable. Let's set the tone. What's that? Yeah, we need a checkbox, right? I'll get to why they selected this company after it. So what do we do? So as a pen tester, one of the first things you do is you look at your statement of work and you say, what am I allowed to do? Well, in this case, they were allowed to hit a single firewall. Even though, according to the diagrams from the company, they had 2 firewalls. They're running them in parallel. But this company is only allowed to touch 1. Red flags, right? I'm on page like 4 right now of 7. So what they do is they fire up ZenMap, so red flag. And the reason why I say that is Nmap is a very good tool that you can use for enumerating an environment, figuring out what IP addresses are actually there, even though they just gave you the 1, right? So why would you use this tool to scan a single? Oh, it's because you can look at the ports and see what ports are open. All right, so I'm giving this guy the benefit of the doubt, but he's using the GUI to do it, so he sucks in my mind. And he doesn't know, yes, so he doesn't know command line interface. Probably. Now, by the end of the report, I definitely know he doesn't. So, after he does this, he does what any pen tester would do, and he starts doing a vulnerability analysis to see what ports are open and what he can actually exploit. No, this guy doesn't do that. He does what's called a trace route. So, does anybody know, one of the students, anybody know what a trace route does? It kind of gives it to you on the board there. Yes, go ahead. So what he said was a very elementary understanding, but it shows you the route that the packets go to. That's actually it. That's not elementary. That's all it is, right? So this guy, who knows the IP address, runs traceroute to determine the path that he took to get there. Okay, I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because a golden rule of pen testing is you document what you did. Fine, I wouldn't have done this, but hey, okay. Hey, he's using a GUI. He used a GUI to run a trace route. All right. So the third thing he does is he pings it. So he just hit it with Nmap. He determined it was up because it responded. Then he trace routed to it to determine that, okay, I could get to it, and here's how. And then he pings it. So he's just determined using 3 different tools that this box is online. He could be thorough, except I'm going to read the text at the bottom because he actually expanded on why he pinged. The ping command was executed and received a response. Okay, that's what it does, right? It either receives a response or it doesn't. The results show that the ICMP protocol was enabled on the firewall. This reveals that the firewall device is online and running. He determined that 2 hours ago, whenever he ran Nmap. Yes, sir. He's logged in as admin. Oh, admin too? Oh, I didn't even catch that. Yes, so he's running tools from admin on his box. All right, so because he's a good pen tester, the next thing he does is uses SSH. So he's determined the box is online, right? So he's going to try to SSH into the box. He says, I have the credentials, I'm going to try to do this. And he fails. So that's good. Screen grab, paste, he's done. Literally, he's done. This is the pen test. Someone paid money for this, right? Thousands of dollars. I'll even tell you tens of thousands. So in conclusion, in the course of the external pen test, the systems did not suffer any breaches or led to conditions that would directly harm the company, blah, blah, blah. I don't even care. It's a can statement he probably has on everything. He has proved nothing except the firewall is online and it has some ports open, which, hello, that's what firewalls do. No, it wasn't hacking team. It wasn't hacking team. So basically, what did we learn from this? Yeah, this company's questionable at best. Basically, whenever I spoke to the manager, it's actually the director of security, and I said, look, you used to use us to do your pen testing. You put out requests for proposals. You went through this whole process to come up with a new pen testing team. I don't care that you stepped away from us. What I care is that you picked these guys. Why did you pick these guys? And the answer was, we got responses from 4 companies. 3 companies were going to cost us $30,000. This guy was going to cost $11,000. It's all about the dollars. Don't make your decisions based on money alone. We all have budgets. We all have constraints. But the purpose of a pen test is to simulate a hacker. Right? So what I had to tell this guy was, as his assessor, I cannot accept this as a pen test. It meets 0 of the requirements that PCI outlines. Let me restate that. It meets 1 requirement, partially. There's a requirement for reconnaissance. He nailed that one. Well, yeah. He limited his reconnaissance. He should have discovered the second firewall, which was a 1-up IP address, but we won't go there. Yeah. Yeah. So what did we learn? Well, basically, wow, I can't even read this. Let me switch my view. Boom. Oh, nope. Oh, well. Anyway, basically, this is the pen testing requirement that says, number 1, you have to have a methodology. So I asked for this company's methodology for pen testing, and they responded and said, we didn't know to ask. So I was like, okay, I could accept that, except whenever I left last year, and you decided not to go with us, I provided you this document. And I said, hey, good luck on your search. I hope you find a good, reputable company. Make sure they present this document to you and they know what it says. It's another information supplement called Pen Testing Guidelines. Not hard to find. If you Google, go into the Google machine, type in PCI pen test, this is like number 2 on the link. It's not hard to find. All right. So, additional resources. Within that, it specifically states you have to pick a company that at least has a methodology based on one of these many methodologies. So whenever I asked for their methodology of the pen testing company, quote unquote pen testing company, which I swear they found on Fiverr, they had to have, they basically said, we have our own methodology. I was like, cool, well, I can accept that. Can you show it to me? They said, no, it's proprietary information. We don't provide that to anyone. I said, okay, did you give a copy to your client? They said, of course not. It's proprietary information. Yeah. Circle. Down the toilet. All right. Here's another one. So within the PCI pen testing guidelines, there's actually case studies. There's several case studies. So if you still read this document, which is written on like a 6th grade level, and you have no clue what's going on, the entire second half is, am I a retail merchant? If I am, here's a case study. Do I have things that look like this, like a camera, a firewall? So I can provide this information. So it's really nice. All right. So next, this is where I'm going to get not as technical. I'm just going to give you some more things that I've experienced. And by the way, one of these may be a fail that was mine. Like I said, I'm really good at fail. It's not this one. This one's pretty bad. So I always throw myself under the bus, right? Because we all mess up. We're human. Our security devices are only as good as us because we program them. So keep that in mind. All right, so company X gets compromised. Happens all the time. Someone breaks their passwords, posts them on Pastebin. They have a contract with a managed security service provider who is watching Pastebin. They see the organization's name. They report back to the organization. You've been owned. They've broken your passwords. system administrator, actually their security director or CISO, puts out to the sysadmins, lock everyone's account, have them all reset their passwords. Sounds great. What they did not do, though, is actually fix the original problem with their firewall. So what happens? The people get back in, steal their creds, break their creds, post it to Pastebin. And the cycle continues until they actually take the time to patch their vulnerability. So this was pretty bad. Oh, and here's the other thing too. No security awareness and training. They do not tell people how to pick a good password. And what they allow is to change the password by one-upping it. Okay? That's kind of hard to track. A lot of systems that you buy do a sucky job at doing this. But there are systems that are free that will let you know this is what's happening in your environment. So even after people were changing their passwords, this could have been another attack vector. I don't know that they used that. They may have. It's simple, right? Just think about it. So the next one, PCI requires scheduled vulnerability scans. They require quarterly scans, right? And what these are is you're using a scanning tool both on the inside to scan your network, see what the vulnerabilities are, and anything that's considered a high or critical, you have to patch immediately, right? And then you have to do an external scan. The external scans, you have to pick a company that's on the approved list. They have an ethics agreement. They have a certain level of training that they're required to have. You just simply go to the web page, you type in a company's name, and it will bring up the company if they're approved, or to tell you that they're not on the list if they're not. So once again, we have a client that left us for their vulnerability scanning, kept us for their assessment, and whenever I went in and I said, hey, can I see your last 4 quarters of internal and external vuln scans? They told me, well, the guy that does our internal scans, we don't use an ASV. We have our own employee. So I asked the typical questions. Does he work directly for the manager of IT? Or does he report to someone else? He reported to someone else. Good, right? So that way he doesn't provide a scan to IT and then the manager says, we'll just push this under the carpet, right? We won't fix anything. My second question is, can I talk to the guy? See how he goes through his scanning. Make sure he actually, isn't just turning something on, pushing a button, and then waiting for a report to spit out. He was good. So I was like, okay, I will accept your internal scans. Your external scans. Your company's not on this approved list. Well, what do we do if they're not on the approved list? Well, you fail. Because I can't accept any of your 4 quarters. Sucked. Actually, I kind of felt good giving them that message, but they failed. So this is something that they had to give a failing report to their bank, and because these guys were a service provider, to everyone they had a contract with, saying we failed because we didn't read the instructions. So pretty sad. Next, we'll go into healthcare. This is my healthcare example. There was a hospital that had electronic patient health information, right? That kind of makes sense. That's what hospitals do, right? And it was stored in a electronic medical record. So because of high tech, you can get lots of money, like millions of dollars, if you switch all your papers, your paper trail, into an EMR. Okay? The government literally just gave, well, I was going to say free money, but we all paid for it. All right. So the local, do I have any Active Directory people here? This blew my mind. Okay. The local users logged in to their local computers and they use an ID and a password, right? Makes sense. That's stored in something called a SAM, Security Account Manager. That's local, right? Well, yep. Then you authenticate to Active Directory. The problem is the group policy within Active Directory had all zeros in the fields. Now let's go over what that means. Enforce password history 0. That means it doesn't know what your password was yesterday. So if you wanted to change it, you could change it to the same password as you had yesterday. Yeah, there's a lot of issues here. So, maximum password age was set to 0. Yes, so what that means is you don't have to change your password. Ever. It gets better. Minimum password age was set to 0. So that means we're not even keeping track, basically. You just have a password. Except minimum password length was set to 0. What does that mean, my AD guys?
Blank box, dude.
You don't even need a password. You authenticate to your laptop. Whenever you open up an application that requires a password, Active Directory says, I know the guy's name. Let him in. It disregards the password. The problem with this is the example I have on the board was not their screenshot. It's the default that says 24 passwords remembered, 42 days long, 1 day minimum password age, and 7 characters. So someone actually took the time to individually go in and set all these to 0. They did this on purpose. I have a winner of the week. This stayed up for a long time. And whenever I asked them, I said, look, why did this occur? They said, well, we were having issues with some of our older applications. We could not figure out how to log into them easily because they'd bought this single sign-on solution that they tried to bolt on and it didn't work. So they did this until they could figure it out. They did this like 2 years ago. So it had been that way for almost 2 years. So that is it. I've tried my best to keep it to 45 minutes. So are there questions? No, I'm not going to. I have an NDA, so I can't. What I will tell you is I'm here today and tomorrow. So if you do think of a question, about anything, I've assessed on SANS Top 20, ISO, PCI, and then just general security assessments and physical security. I haven't done a pen test since Backtrack, so that's been a while. So don't ask me those questions. Here's some of my information. So I'm on Twitter, Fozzie Hacks. That's with a 0. I have a blog which I haven't used since July. That's because I was in Africa at that time, and by the time I got back, I was exhausted. I'm finally recovering from that 3 weeks in Africa. And then I was talking about our organization. It's Kwai Imani. So I will be the webmaster, I've been told by my mother-in-law. So that website will be coming soon. And people I want to thank, actually AIDE. They keep bringing me back every year, even though I have very little to contribute. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Bill. Johnny Long, Hackers for Charity. Like I said, he actually is who got me started in doing my overseas work. And my daughter, this is my daughter presenting at ShmooCon, where Johnny actually came up, took the stage, and said, what you guys are doing is great, but we've got this new way of doing it. And this is actually what we call the rugged Pi. Solar panels, battery backup, will accept any power. AC, DC, doesn't matter if it's clean, and it's a server. So it's great. As long as you can render HTML, you can use the software that's on it. Tom, I'll never forget you, brother. Whenever I left, we were walking out of the building, he opened up his wallet and he said, I don't have much. He gave me all the money in his wallet. It was $22, I remember. And I love you, brother. Thank you. And then because Tom Selleck is one of my favorite people of all time, I went out and found this picture of Dr. Finger. He, too, provided us cash. I appreciate it. This is actually a picture of our visas. He paid for mine and my daughter's visas. So thank you. It's easier to get into a country with 24 bags of equipment whenever you have visas. I appreciate that. So, and that's it. Thanks.